In this video, we're going to build out the back end of our concept car in Plasticity and hopefully wrap up the model, so stay tuned. Hey everyone, this is Matt with Learn Everything About Design, and in this video, we are going to finish off the back end of this car and hopefully wrap up the entire model. Now, as I've mentioned in all the videos, we're going through this process in real time. So anything that we run into along the way is something that is going to be a realistic thing that you likely run into. So we're troubleshooting, we're problem solving, and now we're at the point where we want to finish off the back end and kind of decide how much detail we want to put into this thing. Now, as I mentioned, these sort of scoops that we did, I'm not really loving those shapes. Probably need to spend a little bit more time there. But I think that the back end really needs to be finished first. So we're going to get started by getting rid of the mirrored versions, and we're going to work from the midline. Now, the car currently has a completely flat back end. That's something that we have to change. So it's going to slightly affect the little spoiler that we created, which is fine because it's just a general shape. So what I want to do is start by just adding a reference line here. And I'm going to add another reference line sort of out here and then bridge curve between them. So a lot of times I'll use these sacrificial lines, G0 at the end, G1 at the start, and then I can use that to cut the body with C. So then I can get rid of this little piece and get rid of these curves that I don't need. So we gave it a little bit of curvature in that direction. And from the side, it's straight up and down, and I really want it to maybe roll under a bit more. Well, we've got this section here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start with a vertical line and bring it back to about where I want, rebuild. This side view isn't as critical as, say, viewing it from the top across the mirror line, but I do want to make sure that I'm still kind of close to the spoiler. So maybe go there. If you have trouble seeing it, you can always turn off show faces. And maybe let's play around with this a little bit. We do have to be careful here because of the curvature we just added. So just keep in mind that we do have some limitations here. I'm just going to see what this looks like. I'll bring this over. And let's bring back our faces, and let's just use this to cut the body and see what it looks like. All right, so pretty short back end from the top. It kind of makes a little bit of a jump at this edge, but remember, we don't have tangency here. We've still got a sharp edge. So I am okay with that. I'm not too worried about that jump in transition there. So I think we're good to go on that. All right, so another thing to consider is that the front end, we carry that mid-body line into the front bumper. Now on the back end, it's pretty low. I'm not necessarily sure that we want to carry it over, but generally what happens is when you have a hard body line like that, whether it kind of goes up or whether it's there, it's still used as sort of an inflection point for other curvature or other changes in shape. So we'll just have to play around with it and see what it looks like. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm actually going to fill in the entire back end, and then we're going to cut away sections of it that we might not want. That maybe we'll add things like an air splitter or an air dam or something like that. So let's just get started by going to a side view, taking a look, and probably just adding a curve here. And from a side view, I'm just going to bring it in roughly the same direction, rebuild it, and kind of bulge it out. And we do want to make sure that the bottom is at the right location, so I need to move that up. And then maybe move that one up as well. And this one. Now from there, I'm going to add a line in the Y direction and then use this as a bridge curve. So at the midline, we always want to make sure we're maintaining tangency. At the rest of the body, G0 is going to be fine unless we want to carry tangency out for a lower section that's maybe a bit wider, more like a true bumper. But for a concept car like this, it doesn't really fit. So we're just going to go with just a basic tangent line. We're going to extrude this as a tangency reference and then try to fill this in. I am going to try my hand at loft, which probably isn't going to work, but I'm going to loft from that first curve to these curves, G0 here, and then we're going to shift, select guides, those will be G0, shift select this one, and then just take a look. Let's get rid of those for now, and let's take a basic look. So if I hide the edges, we've got that hard transition on the back. Now that's a lot of body. Definitely not what we want, but again, it's just a starting point. So with that, I think that looks pretty good. The next thing that we want to do is figure out where we actually want to break it up. So using Alt and the mouse wheel, I'm going to get to sort of this back view. I am going to duplicate these curves, and I'm actually going to hide the rest of the body. I don't really need to see it, and I don't want to cut it. And I think I actually duplicated the entire body and not the curve. So I'm going to go to my curve selection, hold down Alt, grab the outside, and Shift D. So that should give us the curves on the outside. Then I'm going to use O to offset those, and it's not liking that. That's okay. We'll go back to our All selection. We'll select the face and do offset on the face. That looks okay. We'll do the same thing down here. And basically what I want to do is I want to cut away probably everything up until that midline, but maybe keep it horizontal. It's hard to tell. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a bridge curve from here to here. Those will both be 0. You can see that this one here is not actually attached to anything, so we'll need to try again. Need to make sure that we are attaching it to the right spot. We'll set that at 1. We'll just do G1 continuity for both of those, and I'll do Shift I for imprint, which should give us a division there. And we'll do this, actually over here we don't want to do that. What we want to do is carry this out to the right. So I'm going to use Control R, snap there, and let's do it here as well. Control R, snap there. So what I'm thinking is we're going to keep this, we're going to keep this section, and we're going to keep maybe this section. That should be divided. Let's do Control R down here as well. Hit Tab. All right, now let's divide it up. Let's go ahead and cut that. So I'm going to take some of these faces and let's delete them. Let's do Shift Delete. And let's bring back the rest of the body just so we can see it. There's a couple extra lines that we don't need. So like this one, we can hit delete. It's an extension of that there. We don't need that. We can get rid of that. But essentially, we've got just a small piece down here and the more major piece up here. So I think that's looking good so far. We'll hide that body. Again, we'll go to sort of a back view. And next what I want to do is I want to duplicate this edge, so Shift D. I'm going to move it over here. And then we'll go to our All selection. I'm going to rebuild that curve. And I'm going to take its end and kind of move it up. So what I'm trying to do is mimic this edge here. And then I want to use this to imprint. So Shift I, imprint that. And a little extension up there we don't need. I can delete that. So a lot of times what you're going to end up with is these sort of overlining or competing trimmed edges. So what we want to do in this section is we want to sink in or sink back a section. So I'm going to hit O for offset. I'm going to kind of offset that in a little bit and then delete it. Now what we're going to be doing is, actually, you know what? Let's bring that back. We're going to do Alt and J, which will unjoin it and then move it forward. G, Y, kind of push it back a bit. So part of the reason I want to do this is because I want to fill this area in, but I want to fill it in with a smaller part. So I'm going to use Control R and trim away some of it. And we'll do Control R again. Maybe trim away that section down there. And now what we can do is use loft. And we're going to use our edges. We're going to loft from here to here. Going to do G1 or G0 continuity. Keep everything sharp for right now. We'll loft from here to here. Again, G0. And then we'll do the same thing here. So loft, G0, G0. But we'll use this as a guide. And this is a guide. Make sure both are G0. Kind of hard to see, but there is a surface in there. And we could also use patch. That would be fine, but patch is a little bit tricky when things aren't joined together. So just kind of prefer loft since they're nice and four-sided. Select both guides, make it G0. Make this one G0. Doesn't want me to click on it for some reason. Just do G0 for all of them. All right, so with all selection, I'm going to go ahead and join all of these pieces together. And it gives us a little bit of detail. That could be a vent, could be a tail light, but it gives us a little something to go on. And I actually want to follow that line into the middle, so I'm going to do Control R and maybe add a little bit more detail here. So Alt and J, and then just move that back a little bit. And I'm just looking to break things up visually. Just having a large panel on the back doesn't look very good. So what I want to do is just kind of break these things up. We're going to loft here, G0 for both. And then we'll repeat that over here. So loft, G0. Again, because the other edges were straight, we don't really need that as a guide. Everything should still line up. I can join these together. Again, one of the benefits of patch is that patch will actually join all these pieces together, whereas loft, we need to do it manually. All right, so that should all be one sheet. And we can come back and do things like select this corner and round it off with a fillet if we want to. And we can do the same thing with these as well. So if we want to add a fillet there, maybe add one to all the corners, and then one at the base, and then one at the top. Keep it fairly small. And we'll do the same thing here. This one might be a bit tricky. Let's see if it does it. Yeah, it does it. Okay. All right, let's bring the main body back and just take a look. So you can see we're adding some detail. It's looking pretty good. And we could certainly do some more underneath here for a splitter. Again, I want to be kind of careful of the time because adding all these details just takes a bunch of time. If we mirror this to the other side, just take a look. Let's go X. So I think that looks pretty good. All right, I'm going to undo the mirror and just spend a little bit more time on maybe adding some detail here. I think what we could do is maybe start from here. Actually, that's out. That's not working. Let's delete that. All right, what I want to do is I want to start from that corner point and come back in the Y direction and then view it from the side. So what I'm looking to do here is maybe have a little bit of a bumped out section to represent somewhat of a crash bumper. And then we'll do a line and maybe come down and maybe somewhere about there. Rebuild it, give it a little bit of shape. And then I'll extrude it. Again, extruding it for the midline tangency reference, but also if we make a bridge curve, that kind of helps there. And let's just do a quick check. Let's do a bridge curve to there. We'll set that one at 0. Set that one at 0. I'll do tangent on both of them. And I am going to try to patch this and just see what happens. It's going to be a little bit messy because now we've got this little fillet in here, this tiny section. It's probably not going to work. Probably what's going to end up happening is I need to do a loft. But let's just try. Let's see if it can attempt it. So tangency here, and you can see what happens. It's trying real hard to sort of get the curvature to work out right. So really what that means is that we need to build this in small pieces, which I think is going to be kind of tricky. But I want to try something real quick, and then we'll kind of move on from this and just leave this bottom piece open. So I'm going to do a bridge curve there. We'll do 0, 0, G1 tangency, and then we will loft from here to here. Tangent on both ends. Shift select a guide curve, and then we can delete those. Yeah, it's not looking super great, but again, whenever we add these minor details like fillets, then trying to bridge that curvature can take quite a while. I think what would need to happen is we would need to take this edge here and duplicate it and maybe pull it out in Y and start to build a surface off of that. So if we loft between these two, G0 continuity, then we're starting to build that sort of shelf section outward. And then, just kind of keep building it. So I'm not going to do it in this video because there's other things that we can spend our time on, but that's the general process there. Okay, so at this point, we could add more detail to the hood if we want to. We could add a spoiler. We could really come back and go crazy with a bunch of detail. There's one thing that I absolutely want to fix, and that was this sort of monstrosity of a scoop I put in here. So I want to make sure that I fill in this area. I'm going to do it with holding down Alt and then just try patching it. We want to carry tangency off the back and tangency off the front and try to carry tangency off of up here, but this is still a sharp corner and that's going to join it together. We also want to join these two together, so I'm going to go ahead and hit J, make it one piece. And if we want to, at this point, we could select this edge and we could add a fillet. So just adding a small fillet to kind of clean that corner up. If you want to spend some time adding a bulge or a scoop in the hood, you certainly can. I think looking at this thing from the front, it could potentially use some more openings here. So I think what I want to do is tap Shift there and there, which is going to give me sort of this tangency reference. And then I'm going to just take that curve and move it. And then I want to build from it. So Shift A. I don't want to go off of that face, so I'm going to tap Shift here, which kind of gives me that coincident reference. And then I'm going to move that one up and then hide the body. So essentially what I'm trying to do is just make another opening and see what this looks like in the body. And we're going to Alt J to undo that. We'll join all these together. And actually those corner points are purple, which means that they're not connected. But if I select this curve and I hit B, it should let me fillet all the corners together. So that looks okay. I'm going to bring the body back, view it from the front, and then do Shift I to imprint. Now, one of the problems with this is it's going to imprint the back as well. or potentially any other portion of the body that it's going to hit. It doesn't really affect us in this case because it doesn't hit anything else, but just keep that in mind. So what I'm going to do is Alt J on this and then move this one back in. So G, Y, and just sort of pull it back. I don't need the curve anymore. I can get rid of that. But it just adds a little bit of extra shape to the body. And we can connect it back together. Sorry about that. Let's connect it back together with a loft. Now, if you want to, you can take this face, offset, and sort of offset it inward a bit. So let's go back. I'm going to bring it in just a little bit. And then I can select the outer portion. Now remember, when you're zooming in, if it kind of goes crazy like that, you can always go to an orthographic mode, which will be a bit easier. So I'm going to hold down Alt on my edge selection and then Shift and Alt here and try to loft between the two. We're going to try G0 continuity for both. And then join them all together. So J. Then I can take this and add a small fillet if I want to, if it'll allow it. It's thinking pretty hard. Let's go a little bit bigger and hopefully it doesn't crash on us. No, I'm not going to risk it. I'm going to hit escape there. This one should work a bit better. But again, it's thinking real hard, so I'm not going to risk that crashing. All right, so that's a little bit of extra detail. If we want to add any other sorts of things like scoops, so from the side, if I want to add some sort of scoop here, we can do it with this sort of the same method. I'm going to add a horizontal line here. I'm going to kind of follow the shape. And then I'm going to do Shift and I and imprint. And one of the reasons I want to do that is because now I can take this and do Alt J. I can move it inward. So GX, kind of pull it in where I want. And what I'm looking to do is to make an opening at the front and have it blend back to the fender at the rear. And we're going to do that with bridge curve. So we're going to bridge from this upper edge to this edge here. Upper edge will be at 1, lower edge will be at 0. We're going to do G0 continuity at the end and G1 at the start. And we'll repeat that, do it at the bottom. Let's go ahead and just move this out of the way a little bit. So we'll go from that edge to this one. Go 100 on that one, go 0 on this one, G0 on the end, G1 at the start. And what this allows us to do is create a loft going from that edge to this one here. So hold down Shift, loft between them. We're going to do G0 at that end and then select our guide curves. So hold down Shift, select both guide curves, and then we can delete those curves and delete that offset surface. So it's an easy way for us to sort of begin building these things. I'm going to join these together. I'm going to use my edge selection to loft between these with G0 continuity. You can click G0 here and it should set it for both curves. If it doesn't work, then start by going to the front, set both to G0, join that to the rest of the body. And then we can use the edge selection and Alt to get that and do a patch. Patch will default to G0, so it's a little bit easier. We'll do the same thing under here. Hold down Alt to select that opening, F, patch, and accept it. And remember, patch automatically joins it back together. And then I'm going to add a small fillet here and a small fillet here. Just pull those out. And again, it's just a little bit more detail. I'm going to leave that sharp, but just kind of adding more detail. And you can do the same thing in the rear fender as well. But at this point, we're 25 minutes in. I don't want to sit here and spend all the time sort of building this out, but I do want to connect the windows. So using my edge selection, this is going to be kind of hard to see. Maybe if I hide the faces, it'll be a bit easier. We're going to go between these two edges. Actually, I'm going to go into perspective mode so I can zoom in a bit more. And shift select that. And I want to loft between them with G0 continuity. That should build a new face if I bring back my faces. So we have that new face. I'm going to go back to my all selection, hold down shift, select the window and the body and join them together. And part of the reason for that is now we can go ahead and hold down Alt and select the rest of that open boundary and try to patch it with G0 continuity. Now, if it doesn't work, then generally what we have to do is repeat that same process. So I'm going to go back to hiding the faces and try lofting from one curve to the other if I can find it. It doesn't let you select through the body unless you toggle on the X-ray mode, but we want to make sure that we have those selected. We'll loft G0 on both and see if it worked. Now, if that worked, then we want to join these together. And once again, I'm going to hold down Alt, try to select this open boundary, and try to patch it. So that looks like it's patching. It's going to automatically join it. I think there's likely another opening somewhere, but I think that's okay. So a little bit of a convoluted process, but that's the way that you would go about it. So this one here, I have to kind of do the same thing. I'm going to try the patch method or the loft method first between the curves. So hold down Alt there and Alt there. So Shift Alt and just see if we can loft between them with G0. Right click to accept. Go back to all selection and join everything together. Okay, so it looks like it worked. Let's go back to perspective, hide our edges, and mirror this thing to the other side. All right, let's go to the clay model where we can see some of the other details we added. So the vent coming off the front fender. We've got extra little fog light vent area. We didn't do anything with headlights, but again, it should be pretty apparent on the last, I don't know, 5 or 6 videos that we're just reusing the same tools over and over again. We're building out a rough structure with straight lines, we're rebuilding them, we're using blend curve, and we're building the surfaces out bit by bit. At this point, I think that's probably as far as I really want to take this. We could do more. You obviously could spend more time adding more details, adding more features, but there are not really any new tools that we're going to cover. We use Control R to sort of break faces up. We use the Shift I for imprinting. We use C for cutting, T for trimming, Alt J to unjoin. And basically we're just using patches and lofts to build a majority of everything out. The care really needs to be taken in the curves and the curve network that you build, and just play around with getting some shapes done. Now, again, at this point, I don't plan on going any further with this. If people go through this entire series and they want to see more or have some questions, I'm happy to do some follow-ups and try to add some more detail as needed. But they're really, without really introducing any new tools, I don't think it's a good use of time. At this point, you have something in front of you, hopefully. If you want to add more detail and share it, you can always send me an email, support@caducator.com. And if you have any questions, please leave a comment. If you enjoyed this, please let me know. I know that these videos are long-winded, but that's kind of the nature of the process. You want to see how to model a car, this is the process you get. But please let me know in the comments if you enjoyed this, if you had problems with it, or if you have any questions. As always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.